I mean, I was prepped for this weeks ago and then thought about it today and I was like, nope, switching that.
Yeah, that's always the kiss of death for me. I was in the same boat. I think we had planned on this back in like mid-December to record it.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here in like the second week of January, finally getting around to it because things get shuffled, because that's how it goes.
Yeah.
And I don't remember any of this. Thankfully, I wrote decent notes way back when, so I won't need much to kind of jumpstart the old noggin.
Yeah, speak for yourself.
These songs may be more obscure than you think.
Some of mine are definitely that.
Yeah.
Hey, we didn't introduce what we're doing.
Shit, we didn't. And we didn't do the music either. So let's handle the music thing first, and then we'll introduce what we're doing, and then we'll do it.
But we won't introduce ourselves or the show.
It wouldn't be the first time, I'm certain.
No, it wouldn't.
That we've gone a whole podcast without mentioning that this is the Fairly KickAss podcast, and this is the first episode of the year of the pod 2025.
Dog water podcast.
It is the absolute worst. But we're here again for more of the same. It ain't getting better. There will be more instances of how it's shit, but don't expect anything more than what you've heard. It's still Zach. It's still Dan. It's still Jay. It's still producer Nikki on the ones and twos, making us sound remotely presentable. And I mean remotely presentable.
Oh, we sound good. She just can't control what comes out of our mouths.
Right. Much to her chagrin.
Yeah.
But what is coming out of our mouths today, Jay? I think you were about to hop into it.
Oh, we kind of were. Yeah. We talked about doing some songs that are super obscure. We're doing one of our classic, iconic top 5 lists. Classic to like the half dozen people that have been with us for as long as they have. Yeah. So top 5, and it's obscure stuff. I love obscure stuff.
Now, we had kind of talked, and this was again back in mid-December, so much of that has been gone through the Swiss cheese of the old brain, but what obscure means to each of us was kind of left open-ended. We kind of decided between the three of us what that meant. So I'm curious to hear, and I don't know if it makes more sense as y'all go through your list to kind of portray it that way, or if you wanted to give maybe a little teaser, a little taste of kind of what obscure means in your mind. You know, maybe Dan, I'll throw it to you. How did you approach this list?
I'm sure a lot differently than you two did, because this is such an open-ended prompt. Like, obscure songs, guess what? Do you know how much music is actually out there? That could describe almost everything. So I gotta narrow this down somehow. I made my liked songs playlist on Spotify. I tried to figure out what's the least listened to there, which for a couple of these choices would, I guess, make you question whether or not I put an emphasis on having or liking stuff that no one else does. And I don't. I put an emphasis on what sounded good to my ears at the time, and if I liked it enough when I heard it first, I just hit that button. And if it happens to be a band you never heard of, so be it. If you've heard of them, cool.
Right on. Jay, what about you? Did you kind of approach it in the same way, or did you go in a different direction?
Sort of. I have the privilege of having worked in underground radio for a number of years. So a lot of what I came up with stems from my years there. So my focus was on the word best obscure, right? My top 5 obscure tracks. So these were some of the ones that like were super famous. And I was honestly surprised when I started doing this at how few spins some of these tracks have.
Yeah.
It's a bit discomforting, actually. I wish these were like 20, 30 times the number of spins minimum.
And just for the edification of folks who maybe have not listened to things this obscure before, there is a point in Spotify where you don't have enough listens to actually show up in the listens count. I'm guessing, Jay, just in terms of knowing, like you said, that you were in this life, you lived this, you breathed it, you probably have at least a few of those. I'm sure more than Dan or I, just because of what the experiences that you've had.
Yeah, I only included one of those on this list, though, where they have so few spins that it doesn't register on Spotify.
I've got a few. They're all honorable mentions. But yeah, I am very excited to hear what both of you came up with. I think if I had to align myself, it's probably more towards Dan. I gave myself kind of a listen count, listen maximum, which was fairly generous. It was 100,000. I didn't think that 100,000 was going to be low enough, but I feel like just in listening and kind of looking at some of these tracks, at least to me, it turned out like, oh wow, this had 70,000 listens. This had 40,000 listens. You know, those felt pretty obscure. And then there were some with like 2 or 3,000 as well. But even the ones that kind of got into the 5 digits still seemed to be pretty off the beaten path. So I felt good about including those two.
Yeah, good deal. I will say this too, though. I did a lot of my listening on my phone, and it is unfortunate that the mobile app for these apps doesn't tell you how many spins a track has.
I mean, it's maddening.
Yeah.
Spotify has been around since 2006. We're coming up on nearly 20 years of this application. Get your shit together. Give us listen counts on the mobile app so we don't have to go to the desktop version to get them.
Right.
Because I know you're listening, Spotify president who has a name probably. Get your shit together.
Yeah, Jeff to Jeff.
Jeff to Jeff. There you go, Jeff to Jeff. Get your shit together. And we are going to get our shit together as well. Jay, let's start with you. Welcome back, by the way, to the pod.
Hey,
I'm glad you're here to keep Dan and I back on the rails, which did not happen the last episode, as you can guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead and start us off with your number 5 best obscure song.
Oh man. Okay, that's a really tall order. Okay, so I'm going to start off with one that it shows my more desire for folksy homespun recordings. One of my favorite artists. I absolutely love her. So I got to see her live. It was just her and a guitar, and she performed the songs from her debut record here, which is The Size of Planets. That artist is Haley Bonner. She did wind up putting out quite a few records after this one, but for me, none of them really hit the same chord. I do love her music, even beyond this, but this album in particular had some of her best tracks. Bless This Mess, Drinking Again, very folksy Americana stuff, but with a sting to it. And in particular, the 10th track on the record, I believe, I should probably double check that before I say it. Yeah, 10th track on the record is a really cutting, no pun intended, song called The Razor That Wins, which criminally has 17,000 spins on Spotify.
I love the title. It's as is going to be the case with most of these are ones that the other two hosts have not heard of. Again, if y'all have heard of them, then we probably missed the assignment to some extent. But yeah, the title sounds just like a track that I would truly enjoy.
Yeah, it's the lyrics are, I mean, a little bit dark as it implies, but also just laid open. Right, it's a moment of catharsis. It's the razor that wins.
Yeah, that sounds super dark, super real, super gritty.
Yeah, I'm pulling up some lyrics real quick because I don't want to get them wrong. I should have had it prepped already, but
prep. We don't do that. Come on.
Right. Coffee stains on my dress and marks on my hands. It's all part of the plan. Light lies in the dark. You're the night and the spark, but you keep my head spinning. Oh, like a dove, you just keep coming back. You poison my brain because I still feel the same. And it's love that remains on the hems of your clothes and the marks on your skin. It's the razor that wins.
Jesus, I love the rhyming scheme on that.
Yeah. And her voice is so raw. And it's just her. It's plaintive. It's cool. There's no gimmicks. There's no trickery. It is just her. And it's beautiful.
It's so tough. I mean, I've seen one show with the same configuration as you mentioned, just person, guitar, stool, or chair of some sort, and just it's the most vulnerable thing I feel like. So I bet that was just an awesome show.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I must have had 3 or 4 mini pitchers of beer that day.
Good man. Way to start us off too. That's a strong one.
Thanks.
Dan, let's kick it to you for your number 5. See if you went in the same sort of direction.
Not even close. Not even close.
I figured.
Let's try this because I feel like I should just like speed through my shit to get to yours, the actual interesting stuff. But it is kind of on brand for me to start out with a parody song and one that would go along with some questions that Zach had actually raised coming into this one, like what would be considered highly obscure, and it would be considered highly obscure to our American ears, but might have more of a following across the pond. And once I describe it a little, that'll make more sense, and it'll also make sense why it's been streamed over 648,000 times. The song is called Shell Toes or Brogues, and it's by Mr. B, the Gentleman Rhymer. On the title alone, it would not shock you to learn that Mr. B is an English artist working in a very English genre known as chap hop, which
Amazing.
Wikipedia defines this as music originating from England that mixes the hip-hop genre with elements from the chapist or steampunk subcultures and stereotypical English obsessions such as cricket, tea, pipe smoking, and the weather. And yes, just reading that sentence sent me down a Wikipedia rabbit hole. I mean, the song is a very middle-class take on footwear, delivered in what would be known as received pronunciation, which I think would probably be what every American hears when someone says something in the British accent. It's, oh yes, it's incredibly, it's terribly, I have a terrible one. I cannot do a posh accent to save my life. I would do useless in Chelsea, but get me with some Scousers, and I think I can probably blend in a little bit. I mean, look, it's ridiculous, but it's a highly competent piece of music, and it does some interesting things rhythmically, but most of all, it's silly, and I unironically love it. Also for the fact that it comes from the record Can't Stop, Shan't Stop.
Yeah, no notes on that one. Also, no notes on the Banjolele.
Banjolele.
I want to listen to everything that this artist has put out, first and foremost. But you bring up a good point that I didn't think of. Like, what is obscurity geographical? Like, is Norway's most popular artist, would that be considered obscure? I mean, well, Norway's second most popular artist. Their first one is Aha, which is not at all obscure.
Thank you, because I was digging around for number one in my head, and I thought they were Finnish.
I mean, it's right there. And we've lost all of Northern Europe. They're gone.
It's all right. Finland's a myth anyway.
And we've lost all of Central Europe after that.
Speaking of starting a Nordic free-for-all, you want to have a go with Denmark too? Actually, the rest of the Nordic countries will have a go at Denmark. We don't have to worry about that one.
It's like the first episode of the year, and we already have like so many more enemies. I love it.
Hey! We've been nothing but neutral to Sweden.
It's true.
That's fair. That's fair.
And we practically love Iceland.
Oh, Iceland's awesome. I can vouch for that one. Reykjavik forever. Pilsas forever. Which are just hot dogs, but like to the nth degree. You have to try them at some point in your lives.
I almost said and then stopped myself, and now I'm going to say Bjork is my boo. That was... There were so many things that went through my head in the 10 seconds where that thought popped into my head.
It has layers, man. I mean,
it has layers.
It's a complex statement.
I'll see myself out.
That alone, I'll be quietly hiding in the Faroes.
Hiding?
Hiding. Yes, I will be hiding in the... It just feels like it's the first time I've ever done this, too.
Yeah.
I know. We got to get our sea legs back under us.
Hey, Zach.
Hey, Jay.
Can you rescue us 2 tracks in?
I doubt it, but I'm going to try because unfortunately, this artist is not anywhere from near Scandinavia. Virginia is about as close as we're going to get here. I do have a couple that fall into this category, which is spin-offs of more popular acts. And the original act wasn't too terribly popular themselves. If any of you listening remember the band May from maybe the mid to late 2000s-ish ? That is the kind of genesis of this particular artist by the name of Dave Elkins, the frontman of May, the band being kind of emo adjacent, kind of like a maybe softer, gentler version of like Relient K with more piano. and that's going to be your May. Dave, during, I want to say, a hiatus in May's discography, put out his own music under the name of Schematic. He released a full length, I want to say maybe more than one, but definitely one full length in 2013 called Color Inside the Lines. In the title, color is specifically noted to be a noun and not a verb, which I thought was a very interesting choice there. And my number 5 track came off of that album. Clocking in at about 10,000 listens on Spotify, it's Rampion Rouge. It's a long boy. It's about 6 minutes, 15 seconds. It's a meandering track, but in a good way. Like the calmest, laziest river that you just want to stay on and drink beers on all day. A neat drum line periodically pierces the track, but doesn't overstay its welcome. It kind of comes and goes and comes and goes, and it's just there and then it's gone. It's just very chill, very, very chill. And different enough from May's main discography that it is different, that it is unique. There certainly is a style there. Dave's vocals are ever present, but it at least is enough of its own deal for me to put it on this list.
Yeah, very cool. I don't know that one.
All I have is a joke asking you, did you come upon this track? Did you find it in someone else's arms?
I can't. I was like, I could cut the suspension. No, it's gone. The moment's left.
Nope. Moment's gone, Floyd. Just punch me later. It'll be just exponentially quicker.
For sure. I got to get my puns back, man. I'm off my game. Luckily, Jay is not off his game. And he's going to prove that with his number 4.
The foot is a game. My number 4, I went with, okay, so this is a little bit of a cheater's route, but it is the only thing on my list that I have on here that does not have any registerable plays on Spotify. And that is because they're sort of from here. They built up something of a local following, but they have done recordings with Steve Albini. So, I mean, the sound is what it is, and you can't knock that at all. The album that they put out in, I want to say 2005, is called Narwhal, and that outfit goes by the name of Trey Suno. The song that I would pick as my favorite track on the record is a song called Saline. It is one of the coolest, I would say, late stage emo, but not to the point where it was like not the louder edge of emo. We're talking more braid or kind of like spitting, maybe even some Fugazi going on in there. So I would say if you're fans of them, you should check them out. And their album Narwhal is on Spotify. It's the only one they've got there.
Very nice. Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the cred department, I would say recording with Steve Albini is certainly one of those that will get you instant cred pretty much in any circle you go into.
Yeah, unfortunately, the album that they have on Spotify is not the one they recorded with Steve Albini. They only released that on vinyl because that's the thing you do.
That's
when
facts.
You record with Steve Albini. You don't want any of that, quality loss.
Or money, for what it's worth.
Sure, or money. You don't want any of that.
Mm-mm. Which, I mean, that's basically Steve Albini in a nutshell.
Yeah. It's also worth noting that record was called The Sexual Deviant Record and had 2 tracks on it called The Song of the Sexual Predator and the Fellatio Song. But
Yeah, I mean, it can't all be hits.
And nothing we've said makes those hits. Anyway, Narwhal's a good record. Saline's a great song. Good band, Trey Suno. Check them out.
There you go. Trey Suno, good band. That's all you need to know.
The silly thing is, I believe I've seen them a couple times, but I can't say that I can't confirm nor deny because I was pretty sure I was just
Blotto. Yeah,
I was going to say just wrecked by the time we actually got to the venue. So
that sounds right.
There's no way. There's a hole. Nope, just dug a hole.
What's your number 4 track though?
Yeah, I say just get out of that.
We need that.
Yeah, okay, screw it. Then while Jay went local, I'll do sort of the same, but let's head north from here. Something I don't do often because that would take me into Michigan, and I try to do that as little as possible, as mitten-related matters are against my religion. But I will relent for talent who had the misfortune of being born there, which is how we get to singer, songwriter, and producer Daniel Wilson. he's worked with artists like Twin Shadow and DJ Dahi and Leo Abrams and Miguel and some kid called the Weekend, I think.
It's missing a vowel or something. Sounds weird.
He's got some talent. He'll go places in this business, maybe. But anyway, Wilson has also put out a few EPs of his own, including 2014's Boy Who Cried Thunder, which gave us the track Heartbreaker. It's actually like the second least popular track on the record, according to Spotify, with about 687,000 listens. I told you the definition of obscure is completely different. But the track is a blend of 80s light rock sensibilities and hints of neo-soul and Motown, and yet another entry in my favorite genre, the happy-sounding sad song. Wilson himself has a huge range on his vocals and a unique falsetto that only ups the memorability quotient there. And it is a track that is hard to get out of your head once you hear it. So while there may be a little bit of work involved in finding it, it is just as hard to forget.
Right on.
I feel like I know this artist. I feel like I've seen a TikTok. Maybe you sent me a TikTok from...
No, I'm pretty sure I got this artist from some massive playlist we were passing back and forth. So I think this artist is your fault, even the fact that I know him whatsoever.
And of course, I can't remember. Yeah, I have no idea. Like, it's just so vaguely familiar.
To be fair, and to kind of break the fourth wall, in the early days of Spotify, or even starting on some other music sharing sites, we used to collaborate on a playlist, and I think we still do. It still exists somewhere, where we just put songs in a playlist and go, hey, I put new stuff in there, check it out. And I think we stopped adding to it after it passed the 45-day mark in length. So it's probably in there. It was in there somewhere, and it just, something hit, and I was like, I'm taking this song and sticking this in my brain.
Yeah, I guarantee it's one of those where I'll listen to the track or even find the track that you and I had collaborated on and be like, oh, that, of course.
Right. Before I tracked us further off the rails, let me bring it back to you for your number 4 song.
I can do it, my friend. I can do it. This is also going to be a bit of home cooking across the board for our number 4s then. I will say that I can only vaguely remember the Battle of the Bands event where I first heard, as it were, my number 4 artist. It was a small local event in Columbus, Ohio, which would have probably been in the year 2002, like late 2002 if I had to guess. It consisted of small local acts, as those battles of the band are wont to do, including one that I believe that I have mentioned on this pod before, being Mrs. Children, who themselves were also from Columbus. It had a more like Strokesian feel, songs that I would love to tell you all about, but they have unfortunately been lost to time, either that or they're buried somewhere deep in the recesses of SoundCloud where I can't find them. However, a couple years later, they renamed themselves The Wiles and shifted to a more, let's call it Shinzian sort of indie vibe. Different, but awesome in its own way. And it was in the Wiles iteration that we found the track in question from their album Colors of the Year. The track is called Emily. It has the fewest listens of any track in my top 5 with around 3,000. But as I could say for every song on this list and on Dan's list and on Jay's list, it should be more. It's pretty, it's melodic, it's just a lovely song. It's not one of those that's going to win any awards for the vocals or the very light instrumentation or even the lyrics, but it's just one of those that you listen to and you just kind of smile. It's just nice. It's just lovely and nice.
Very cool. Nice, cool homespun record. Love it.
Shout out to local bands. Let's just throw that out there.
Yeah.
They're the spiders of the music ecosystem. That was a weird analogy.
Yeah, it was.
Like, because you don't necessarily notice them and you maybe don't even like them if you hear about them, but they're the ones that keep everything going, that keep everything moving, that are the backbone.
Yeah, everyone's local to somewhere.
That is true. That is more profound than this episode deserves of this podcast.
It's so profound, it's almost stupid.
That's more like it.
There we go. We're back. And Jay, we will go back to you for more profundity with your number 3.
No, we won't. It's not profound. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go to Detroit for this one as well. This is a let's imagine at some point that, let's say, Devo has a meltdown and members of Horse the Band come in to fill in some gaps, and then they birth a cartoon. This band's called Thunderbirds Are Now, and if you've never heard them, I'm sorry, because they're amazing. But they also they sound like, well, maybe Devo on methamphetamines would be a better description. It's synth indie rockcore, but cranked to 11. They do have some stuff on Spotify, but what I'm going to talk about isn't even on Spotify. It's one of their albums that came before that. They put out a record in 2002 called Dr. Lawyer Indian Chief. And I'll just list some of the titles from that record. How about KGB Phone Sex? Or Not Witherspoon, but Silverstone? Pink Motorcycle Helmet, Kitchen Orgy. When it comes to elements, hydrogen is tits.
They're not wrong. I mean, they're not.
Or the very last track on that record, Baby Girl, I Got 10 Kids, Let's Not Make It 11. So they're crazy, and that whole record is 20 minutes long, give or take a few minutes. It's spastic, it's energetic, it's frenetic, it is all over the place, and it's everything you want it to be. Thunderbirds Are Now are amazing. If you don't have the patience, I think you can only find that record on YouTube as like a whole album. Like, I don't think you can pull up a song at a time. It's the whole thing.
Was that again? Baby Girl, I Have 10 Kids, Let's Not Make It 11?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Man, who knew that Nick Cannon was in this band? That's really cool. Good, glad to see it.
Like he would turn down another kid. Come on.
But yeah, that is... I thoroughly enjoy an album with just like the wackiest, silliest song names, preferably that don't end up anywhere on the track at all. Like that's a win for me.
Yeah, that's most of it. I will add to that full album on YouTube. I just found it has 1,000 views and 48 likes. So there you go.
Very nice.
It's a beautiful record. I absolutely love it.
I am excited to check it out, as I'm excited to check out dance number 3.
Let me do something that you probably heard before, because I feel like I've done this a number of times. Not tonight, over the years. This one actually would follow closer to what you guys would call the obscure count. But it's also another song that I was exposed to thanks to the musical tastes of Bill Lawrence, Zach Braff, and Krista Miller. Appearing in season 4 episode of Scrubs, I'm going with former NYC indie pop outfit, the Churchills, and Everybody Gets What They Deserve. And it's at the time that I wrote it, it came in just with under 37,000 spins on Spotify. And you know what? Sure, it got used in an episode of Spin City too, but it's from Scrubs as far as I'm concerned. No one remembers Spin City. That was an unnecessary dig, and I'd like to apologize. The point is, the song is another jangly pop track that's got some of that 60s garage rock influence working in the background of another upbeat track full of regret and lament from a protagonist that is on the other end of the breakup song, recognizing that he's the one that's treated his partner badly and is trying to, deal with that. But it's just done in a way that will bury itself into your skull, very much like Heartbreaker, actually, and an inadvertent double theme on this top 5. It's the only song off the only album of theirs on Spotify, though they did release full records. 2000's You Are Here is the only one that's up there and it's widely available. And like I said, just north of 36,000 streams on that.
I feel like every single project that Zach Braff has been a part of has had just the most fantastic soundtrack.
It is kind of interesting between the links between those 3 people particular, because Bill Lawrence, produced Scrubs. Zach Braff obviously became a big part of the creative team behind that. And Krista Miller also in having roles both in front and behind the camera. But like the 3 of them are quite the interesting musical drive behind all their projects. Spin City is an example. Cougar Town is another example that the soundtracks just kind of became their personal playlist if you read into a whole lot of their stuff, which is very interesting. But yeah, because I mean, I believe we did an episode at some point on soundtracks, and Garden State ended up on 2, if not all 3 of our lists, or somewhere in on there.
At least 2. I can't remember.
This is where I would do a cheap plug to tell you to scroll down your podcast app of choice and go find this top 5. But I'm not confident it exists.
We did a top 5 soundtracks at one point.
Okay, so it might be down there somewhere.
Yeah.
But you know what? You should go looking for it anyway, because you might find something else that you really like, and you're really interested in listening to. You know, like how we told you how the one song for Prince is like all of them.
That's true. That is not an incorrect statement.
I've run out of promo copy, so go ahead and give us your third song on the list.
No, that was a hell of a run, man. That was solid. But we are going to talk just briefly about the new pornographers, and specifically the co-lead vocalist of this band. They're all lead vocalists. Let's be real. But specifically Catherine Calder, obviously most known for her time in the new pornographers, starting off as a live show fill-in for, and then later on performing alongside Nico Case. But that's not the band in question, like I said, because that really wouldn't fit the idea of obscure. Instead, let's dive into the lyrics of a random Paul Simon song, One Trick Pony, where Paul sings, quote, "He makes it look so easy, he looks so clean, he moves like God's immaculate machine." From their second studio album, Ones and Zeros, my number 3 track is Fire in the Lobby by One Immaculate Machine, starring Catherine Calder and 2 other folks, whose names I don't remember because prep is not a thing we do on this podcast. We already mentioned that. Cool harmonies, some fun dingy-dongy sorts of electronic sounds. That is an industry term, by the way. And Calder's solo vocals dot this jangly track nicely. Similar to Schematic, I'm not as big of a fan of Immaculate Machine as I am of the new pornographers, but I would still gladly and have gladly listened to all of it, including Fire in the Lobby. And for those keeping score at home, that clocked in at about 7,000 spins total.
Oh, cool. That's what I was trying to look for.
I was just trying to find the other 2 names that you were coming up on, and Brooke Gallup and Luke Kozlowski.
Thank you. We are about consistency on this on this podcast. Consistently bad is what we are.
No, well, yes, no, but yes, but yes, but no.
Jay, is your number 2 a no but yes or a yes but no?
It's somehow both. So my number 2 track is, I mean, believe it or not, like I do have favorite songs, even though I'm curmudgeonly about many things and wishy-washy about everything else. I do have some favorite songs. And this album is one of my favorite records of all time. It is criminal that it has so little play. The album is called Fantastic Spikes Through Balloon, and that band is called Skeleton Key. Wonderful, cerebral, very cool outfit. Lyrics are very heady, but always fun. And this album has a couple of songs that are, let's see, the word I want to use is angular, but that word is very 2003. So I'm going to say sharp. The guitars are sharp. The vocals are crisp and very cool. And the drums are unlike any other drums. They do things, sometimes with cobbled together kits. Honestly, the best description I can give you is by telling you to head on over to YouTube. Go ahead and hit pause here and we'll wait, but head on over to YouTube and look for Skeleton Key performing on MTV's Oddville. They performed the song All the Things I've Lost, which is from Fantastic Spikes Through Balloon, and it tells you everything you need to know about the band.
I feel like it sounds familiar, and it may be because you've mentioned them before. I do need to ask you, though, if you agree with the New York Times write-up of the song where they mention that it constructs, quote, lean, clattery vamps. Would you say that that's true?
I don't know what that means, so yes.
There you go, folks. Lean, clattery vamps abound in Fantastic Spikes Through Balloon.
That's so perfect. It makes no sense at all, and I love it. I do, like, the album has some of my favorite lyrics. I know, like, I'm a I'm a sap for a really simply phrased, perfect lyric. And honestly, the next track on the record from All the Things I've Lost is called The Only Useful Word. And the chorus goes, nouns are worthless, laughed at by the verbs. Erase the names, the tense has changed, and goodbye is the only useful word.
Love it. Absolutely.
It's so good.
Yeah, that is even the titles and not knowing anything else about most, if not all, these albums and artists, just like you go with what you know. And what I know is Fantastic Spikes Through Balloon. It's a good title. Vomit Ascot, good track name.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know that wasn't the track you picked, but it was the one that I looked at on Wikipedia, and it was the one that my eye was drawn towards.
I mean, it's hard to ignore that one.
There's also Watch the Fat Man Swing, which is the album opener, which is about going and watching a polka band play.
And the world's most famous Undertaker, which I can only assume is about pro wrestling's Mark Calloway.
No, but it should be.
Even better. Dan, is your number 2 as weird and wacky as I suspect Fantastic Spikes Through Balloon is?
Could be.
I'm sorry, Lean and Clattery. Apologies to the New York Times.
Clattery. No. Closer to fluty.
Oh, excellent.
So my number 2 song is actually an example of TikTok being a positive for music. Finding you new artists who are on the verge and or do some unique, very cool work that deserves your attention. Founded a tremendous ska community on there, and a lot of it's well worth just going onto TikTok, search for ska. There's some great stuff up there. This in particular, though, all that is that I just described is the case for the duo Sax Kicks Abs and their collab banger with Crucial, Done With the product of a highly talented pair out of New Orleans. Sax Kicks Ab was intended as a side project, and then they went viral with their videos on social media, especially during the pandemic. And now they're this creative tour de force who allow me to share the About Me section of their website. According to our publicist, we are a dynamic multi-instrumental hip-hop duo combining the Grammy-nominated talent of Albert Allenbach with the virtuosic lyrical prowess of Grammy-nominated New Orleans rapper Alfred Banks. They create uniquely electrifying music, a smorgasbord of hip-hop, humor, and world-class craft. I would like to hire that said publicist because that was amazing and the perfect description overall of their music. The song Done With is a banger of a declaration of being just literally done with it all. The full line is done with the bullshit, but they were classy about it. Alfred is a tremendous lyricist whose verses just weave in and out of this wall of sound that Albert is creating out of a tight beat and a massive chorus. And of course, horns and flutes. The flute, the typical hip hop instrument there.
Oh, just ask Andre.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. The energy of the song cannot be denied, and you can't listen to it without, at the very least, nodding along in time. And it is one of many highlights off of their debut record, Terrell Charbonneau, which dropped just in the middle of December and in the December, not back in December, but the singular December. Either way, I recommend a listen.
Beauty.
Oh, sorry. I was looking up ska on TikTok.
Oh.
And I will be closing that. Otherwise, I will be here for the next 17 hours.
I mean, you could certainly do it. Just maybe minimize it to when you're supposed to be doing the show stuff.
Show stuff? Oh, this show right here that we are indeed doing.
I think it's even your turn.
Yeah.
Even better.
Did you just find a TikTok ska to add to your list?
My number 2. If you know anything about me, you know that I am very easily distracted, as we have just displayed. You also know that I love Taco Bell, which has nothing to do with the episode. I'm just kind of hungry and wanted to throw that bit in. Something that is relevant, however, is that I love a good sample. So when I first heard my number 2 track, which sampled 1970s Venezuelan prog band Ananta, I knew it was going to work out just fine. The lyrics could be trash, and I would still love this song. As a bonus, though, the lyrics are absolutely resplendent, as is the aforementioned sample. It is an artist that maybe is known and maybe is not. This is the one that I wasn't sure about at all as I was putting it together. It is hip hop artist Homeboy Sandman off of his album White Sands. The track is called I Saw a World. And it's dense, lyrically dense, like cottage cheese dense. Sand's sort of methodical delivery makes each lyric stick around in your head for a couple beats longer than it normally would. Gives you time to think and process the metaphors, and there are metaphors aplenty. It's exactly what it sounds like in the title. Sand is talking about how he saw a world and how he sees the world that he is in a very cool and very interesting sort of descriptive way. You need time to work through everything he's saying, but luckily his delivery does give you that time to kind of think, oh, that's what he means. And if you're like me, you will have that, oh, that's what he means moment more than once as you listen to the song. It's very similar to another artist that we've spoken about many, many times on this podcast, being one Aesop Rock, which you will not be surprised at all to know that the two of them did have a collaboration together known as Lice. The first EP dropped in 2015. It is wonderful. Go listen to it as soon as you finish listening to this episode and all the tracks included in it, which you will find, by the way, on fairlykickass.com with our ride-along playlist that will be published with the episode.
Right on. I don't know that one either, so that's awesome.
Yeah, perhaps one of my favorite, maybe not one of my favorite tracks of all time, but one of my favorite samples of all time for sure.
I mean, just the fact that you were able to use the phrase 70s Venezuelan prog band.
It's like 3 bingo squares in one. It's perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like, I always wanted to talk to like some of these crate digging producers, so to speak, and just ask like, yes, I know you have like thousands of albums, but like how did you come across them first and foremost? And how did you figure out like this specific piece of this specific track on this specific record? This is the one that needs to be in the song. Like, how does it speak? How do you hear it and think like, okay, I'll slow that down and that'll basically be my hook. Like it's a fascinating process.
Yeah, very cool.
What is also fascinating to me is the tracks that are still obscure but didn't quite make the cut for the two of you and for me, for the three of us collectively. Because that's how that works. So Jay, we'll start with you. What were some of your honorable mentions?
Some of my honorable mentions. So let's start. I only have a couple. I slimmed it down. I'm going to start with an outfit out of Chicago that I first saw at a Halloween show, and he was dressed like Speed Racer and diving all around the room, and it was awesome using his helmet. That band is Detachment Kit. Their first album is They Raging Quiet Army, and the song Dead Angels Make Slow Sound only has 17,000 spins or so, and I don't understand it. It's a wonderful album, wonderful song. I'm going to follow that up with some tunes that didn't quite get obscure enough to make my list. They have too many spins. And that would be a band called Mad at Gravity that I also had the opportunity to see live. Some of their tracks do have a couple of million spins, but one of the mid-album tracks called In Vain is a beautiful track, very 2000s rock in the Incubus Hoobastank vein, but they're good at it. And that track In Vain only had about 47,000 spins. Then we'll move on to one of my favorite outfits of all time, and that is Agents of Oblivion, featuring the frontman and guitarist from Bayou metal band Acid Bath. This, however, is not a metal record. It's like blues. And this song is called Wither, and it has 116 or so thousand spins on Spotify, and only like half of that's me. And then finally, I'm going to add another outfit that I got to see here in town at the Howard's in Bowling Green, and that's the band Denali, who is one of the coolest vocalists I've ever seen live. She's absolutely amazing. I picked the song Gunner, which has in the neighborhood of 140,000 spins. I didn't get specific on here and forgot.
Nice. Did you say that last act was also from the area, or do you just saw them in the area?
No, they're from Virginia.
Nice.
But I saw them here in town.
Yeah, that says a lot that like 140,000, which is still not a lot of spins whatsoever, that
No.
is for this list considered like, in your list considered too much. Like that's
Yeah.
really cool.
Some fantastic songs. And honestly, like it's fun too, because Mara is the woman that sings at the front of Denali, and her brother was the frontman slash guitarist for Engine Down. So just super talented family and wonderful music.
Very nice. Dan, what about your honorable mentions?
I also only have a couple. They're probably closer to in the spin count to what you guys were looking at for obscure, but like, I just didn't want to, or just didn't think it up them quick enough. And like, oh well, I remember these now. I've used it in a couple of places, so I didn't want to add Day Room's Cheap Wine, even though it only has like 12,000 spins on this. I have more of a retro indie pop feel from quotes from movies and his Super Mall Mannequin, about 80,000 spins there. My most obscure, technically, on spins alone, because it only has about 3,800, is Tim Cullen and Face. And I wish I could remember how or where I found this one. I have no idea. I thought it was another Scrubs song, but it's not after I looked it up. And I didn't recognize the band he fronted originally, the Cali alt band Summer Camp from the early 2000s. So I have no idea where the song came from, but I know not an insignificant number of those 3,700 spins were me. And then for funsies, I didn't have to pick, but I added one from Midwest comedian / legend Haywood Banks, most known for a song about a melting deity, but also in the 12,000 spin range. Another one which always makes me giggle, and it's Trauma to the Groin.
Ouch. It doesn't make me giggle at all.
As long as it's not your groin, which
Right,
is
that's true. That's fair.
Point of like, that's like the point of the third verse. What about you?
As far as my honorable mentions, I'm going to lead off with a couple that I literally added as we were talking. Jay, thanks to you, because of your mention of Devo, you reminded me of the fantastic Devo-esque, synth-esque band by the name of Fantastic Plastics, a lovely duo from their album Dimensions. The track Machines Do the Work was the one I picked with 11,000 spins, with slightly more spins, clocking in at 3.2 million, and I'll explain how that fits here in a minute, is the artist Agent Fresco with the track Dark Water. Jay, this is because you mentioned Bjork. Agent Fresco, nothing like Bjork. It's more just traditional rock. However, they are an Icelandic band. So I do wonder if a lot of their listens come from Icelandic listeners and not as many from the US. So kind of Jay and Dan combining both of your concepts into one in a really cohesive way, which is unsettling to say the least.
It's weird because you would think that we put this together and planned it, but I have no doubt in my mind that he absolutely thought of this band after you mentioned Bjork and wrote them down in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
100%. and granted, we have done more in the last 20 minutes of a show, but yeah, I was pretty stoked that I got to speak of both of those acts. A couple of others that I'll breeze through. That same Battle of the Bands that earthed my love, the same Battle of the Bands that birthed, is that word, my love for Mrs. Children, also birthed my love for another local band by the name of Underhero, specifically their song Kamikaze, which just recently hit Spotify either last year or the year before. That is under 1,000 spins, so it doesn't even register on Spotify. Another one that doesn't register on Spotify is the track Week 5 by the very talented outfit Sexbat, if you know, you know. We have the Hot Toddies, which is listed as an all-girl surf pop band from Oakland, California. I could not describe them any better than their Facebook does, specifically the track Wet Dream from the album Smell the Mitten. And finally, the New Frontiers, or Stella Maris, I believe they are called Stella Maris now, previously known as the New Frontiers, with the track Faces on Screens.
Dan's still laughing at Smell the Mitten.
The record is called Smell the Mitten.
They have a vibe. It's kind of like a more G-rated, like Garfunkel and Oates.
Okay.
It's solid, and it's very surfy. It's very good.
Cool.
as we typically do on this show, we've reached the end of the road. I think the show could be considered the end of the road for most listeners, but here we are. Jay, let's go to the very tippy top. Hit us with that number one.
Bring it home. So this album actually, the artist put this album out in about 2004. I think it was a double album at the time, though I think you can just listen to it all on Spotify all at once. The album's called The Truth. Artist is called Train Dodge, which is a cool homage to film. The album has songs titled Bent and Broken Down, Success is 1,000 Fathers, The Cameras Instead of Eyes. But my favorite track on the record happens to be a tune called Watermark. Very cool songs, very heavy on the drums, heavy on the bass, really cool rhythmic stuff done. Not a lot of sing-songy vocals. It's more just kind of like indie garage shouted. But it's one of the coolest compositions of any record I've ever heard. And they've had many records since, a couple before it actually. But this is the one that stuck. This whole album, start to finish, some of these songs are 11 minutes long, some of them are 3 minutes long, and it doesn't matter. You're going to listen to the whole thing anyway. Just the poetry and the imagery and the cool constructed sounds that come out of these individuals is nothing short of brilliant. And all of these songs have less than 4,000 spins on Spotify.
You mentioned how cool the song is. I want to mention how cool the genres are that are listed for this track on Google, specifically rock, which is fine. But then it goes into Turkish rock, French indie, and Ukrainian indie.
Yeah, and it can't be all those, can it?
If it can, then please give them every award. Give them all the Grammys. Give them Oscars.
Well, why can't it be all three?
I suppose.
It's a high bar, but holy crap, that is complexity.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. I like them quite a bit.
Very nice. Yeah, go check out that Ukrainian, French, Turkish rock outfit, Train Dodge.
By way of Oklahoma City.
By way of Oklahoma. The bastion of international culture, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Yeah. That's astounding. I love it. Dan, I don't even have to listen to your number one to know that I'm going to love it.
Maybe. I don't know. I can wrap my list up, though, with a bit of a confession, and I never thought I'd make this myself, but so I apparently am into synthwave, and liked it before I realized it. Wasn't even sure what it was when I found my number one artist. Do you know what I really couldn't stomach about living in Santa Clara? All the damn vampires. And all the damn vampires describe themselves as a synth lover's dream, a modern synth pop act that creates a cinematic and mesmerizing aesthetic vibe, which is the perfect description of their work, and especially the closing track off their 2022 Miami Vice soundtrack record that never was, Synth City. That one is my pick, my top obscure track at the moment. It's Runaway Dream. And like I said, this entire record is montage music, actually, but this song is the top of that mountain. If you can think of a cliche to hang on to 80s pop, it is in this song. If you can think of anything that would be a cliche about the 80s, it is in this song. This song, despite the fact that it's 3 years old, is pure 80s. If you sniffed your speaker while playing this track, you would get a whiff of Tony Montana's Desk.
I think you wanted a bigger laugh than you got, but that was a couple of good smirks for you.
It's fine. But yeah, like I said, if you are one who can stomach yourself some synth, go seek out all the damn vampires.
I think I shall.
There you go. Get it done, listeners.
What gets it done on your list, Zach?
Well, getting it done at number one, I'm a poet, I didn't even know it, is a band named after a drive-in movie theater. I mean, maybe not the best, but there are worse things to name your band after. And yes, Sexbat, I'm looking at you. When your drive-in movie theater, however, has a name as cool as this, then maybe you roll with it. Consisting of about 4,000 listens on Spotify, it is pop rock sensibilities on parade, courtesy of the band Admiral Twin, from the album Mock Heroic. The track is Half a World Away. Now, there is a universe in which this band gets big, like stratospherically big, either in lieu of or in addition to a very similar band that you've all heard many, many tracks from. The two that jump out at me are Fastball and the Bare Naked Ladies. Very similar sound, very similar, like I mentioned, the pop rock sensibilities. I think these three bands have them in spades, and sometimes it's just luck. Sometimes it's not skill. Sometimes it's not ability. I'd say more often than not, far more often than not, it's just the luck of getting big. And Admiral Twin was a band that just simply didn't. Despite having an opening slot on a Hanson tour in the late 90s and a different track from this album that was played during the movie The In Crowd, still wasn't enough to break through. And that is really unfortunate because I think this band could have had some absolute and did have some absolute banger albums, but banger albums that more people would have known about. Alas, I know about them, and now y'all know about them. I feel that Half a World Away specifically is the best of a really good bunch of tracks on this album. It's concise, it's sing-alongable, it's got a fun, interesting take on the lover scorned theme, specifically that both lovers are scorned and hate each other's guts. And the lead singer is singing about how, essentially, I want to tell you off. I want to tell you to go to hell and to kiss my ass, but you're already half a world away because you have run that far away to get that far away from me. And you've deprived me the option of getting that far away from you. It's a very interesting take on that sort of more tropey thing that you find a lot in songs. They have a few other albums out there on Spotify to check out if you like this. If you want something a little weirder, check out, it's called Eustace and Isidore is the name of the track. It's definitely an outlier compared to everything else, but it is also fantastic, just like Half a World Away is.
Awesome. I want to have more to say about it, but I don't know it. So it's hard for me to...
Right. I'm more so questioning a citation that maybe you can help me with here.
Oh, do tell.
You know a little bit about the band here. The vocalist is listed as one Mark Carr, who is cited as the current head football coach at Hartwick College. No, I take that back. He was fired this year. So I don't know if there needs to be there's just a different Mark Carr that we're working with here.
I choose to believe that the dude who made this song was also a college football coach.
He was a college football coach. He made the song whilst playing quarterback at New Hampshire.
Shout out Mark Carr, man. Like that's skill to be able to do. And again, it very well might be two different dudes, but we choose to believe it's the same guy.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah, to, I guess, take down the fourth wall a little bit. We like to have the in-between songs banter and, oh, yeah, I liked this thing about this song, or, oh, I didn't like that thing. We just can't do it that well because we don't know what these songs or artists are.
That was kind of the point of the whole thing, I believe, too.
Right. So if you noticed more dead air after someone talks about a song, or more like, yeah, that sounds good. Like
if someone named their song and then you heard us go all college radio, that's why.
That's why.
Right.
Oh gosh. Yeah, great. I'm assuming great lists. I will be finding out, listeners, much like you will be finding out in the near future as you check out the Ride Along playlist on fairlykickass.com. Let us know some of yours. There are so many, compared to the songs that you've heard of, compared to the popular songs, there are miles and miles more songs that you haven't heard of. And miles more that aren't even on Spotify. So share your favorites, whether they're on Spotify, whether they're on YouTube, whether they're songs that you yourself have produced and released. We'd love to hear all of them and make them less obscure in our lives. At Fairly KickAss on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Threads. fairlykickass@gmail.com is our email address. As I mentioned, fairlykickass.com is the website du jour. And check us out anywhere where you find your podcast. You can search for Fairly KickAss. A couple of the heavy hitters, of course, being Apple Music, being Amazon, YouTube is becoming a more popular destination for podcasts. Check us out there. Of course, Spotify, where we sourced a lot of these songs. Fix your mobile app, guys. Fix the damn app. Get your shit together.
No joke.
Any parting words for the people before we call this the first show of 2025?
Don't let the shit you love fall through the cracks. Broadcast that stuff, man. Like, we want to hear it. Everybody wants to hear it. If you love it, so will others.
Yeah. New year, new you. Let that new you be one that shouts from the rooftops about what you bring to the table.
Word.
That's it. Goodbye.